As future social workers, we will be interacting with Indigenous peoples in many subsections of this field. Whether we choose to work in housing, child welfare, or employment, these are all social issues that impact Indigenous peoples. It is important for us to not cause more harm, but instead assist with culturally appropriate interventions as led by Indigenous peoples.
Growing up in a small community such as the Pikin-Geekum First Nation Reserve, it is difficult to pursue higher education due to a low population and underfunded resources. One must leave the reservation to further their education as there are fewer opportunities on the reservation. Parents encourage their children to do all that they can when it comes to furthering their education, so that they can reach their fullest potential in regards to academics, as their parents were not able to do so. No one truly knows what to look forward to when going off reserve for education. Culture means everything. It is one thing that cannot be sacrificed.
Graduating elementary school with the friends you grew up with is an important milestone to most young people. These students have worked hard and succeeded in combating many obstacles that they have encountered in the on-reserve school system, such as severe underfunding. Now, they begin a new chapter. Going to high school off-reserve for Indigenous peoples is an increasingly tough challenge, but it is one of their only ways to further their education in mainstream Canada. This graduation is not just a ceremony, but a celebration of their resilience.
When most non-Indigenous students go to school, they are in awe of those who have attended before them and the opportunities they had after they left. They wonder if it will be their names on a banner once they graduate. It is not the same for many Indigenous teens. They hear the deaths of their people who have gone before them. They see their names in bold in the headings of newspapers. They wonder if it will become their reality. They wonder, if it is, will their deaths be left unexplained too?
This is Kern Strang, one of 5 teenagers who were found dead in the rivers of Thunder Bay over the span of 11 years. As with all of the cases, if the police found any leads, they never fully invested their time, or the leads were not considered solid enough to continue looking into.
Jethro Anderson was an Indigenous teen who was found dead in 2000. Many questions were asked after his death, such as, why him? Why is it always Indigenous teens? How is there supposed to be any progress if there's no one noticing these tragic deaths? The stereotypes associated with Indigenous teens in Thunder Bay left these young people in a position where they were often blamed for their own suffering and their own deaths.
Kyle Muriso was the grandson of famous Anishinaabe painter Nuval Muriso. Like his grandfather, Kyle was a talented painter and was skilled in the brightly colored Anishinaabe painting style. Kyle struggled being far from home, though. On top of this, he had to deal with acts of discrimination against him and his friends regularly. In Thunder Bay, prejudice against Indigenous peoples varies from subtle glares to outright violent attacks and harassment. This only made being away from home more difficult and put his safety at risk. These were just more hurdles he needed to overcome in order to be successful at school and after. Sadly, the world and his community will no longer benefit from his talents.
This is the river the Indigenous youths were found in. There is nothing particularly threatening about it, yet it has become the place that is associated with the deaths of Indigenous students attending the nearby high school, so much so that they are warned to avoid it at all costs. The cases will not likely be reopened, and no other precautions will be taken due to the lives lost. This is the unfortunate reality for many murdered Indigenous youths in the Thunder Bay area.
The reserves that Kyle, Jethro, and Kern came from are far from large cities or towns. The reserves in northern Ontario, such as Wabekwi and Kiwewin, are far apart from each other, with no roads to connect them together or to other cities to the south. This leaves these communities physically and socially isolated. When Kyle, Jethro, Curran, and other Indigenous students from northern reserves arrive in Thunder Bay after traveling long and far from home, they often arrive very alone.
6 out of these 7 youth went to Dennis Franklin Cromarty High School. It gathers First Nations students from 24 remote First Nations communities. The school is only for First Nations students and is run by the Northern Anishinaabe Education Council. This is one of the only opportunities for further education for the First Nation youth in the surrounding areas. It is a great example of community organizing because it addresses part of the gap in funding and support for Indigenous youth who have a right to be educated. But how were these families supposed to know that this great initiative for an Indigenous high school would also lead to such tragedy for their children and families?
When tragedy strikes, community organizing plays a crucial role in making a difference and keeping communities together. Dreamwalker gatherings are a step in this direction. These gatherings seek to create a holistically healthier transition for on-reserve First Nations teens into urban high schools. It helps them stay in touch with their culture when they are far removed from it physically. Communities are tied across, quote, shared space, beliefs, kinship laws, language, interests, and/or cultural identification, end quote. And these gatherings help teens to experience this feeling of community away from home.
The 7 phases of community organization are pre-contact, contact and engagement, community analysis, organization development, popular action, evaluation, and the end result. Pre-contact involves finding sponsors for the Dreamwalker event, such as Hydro One, and people to participate, such as comedian Don Burnstick, pictured here. The contact and engagement stage can be seen in the Niagara Peninsula Aboriginal Area Management Board working with the communities to put on Dreamwalker events appropriate for the audience that will be attending. This step can also be used to collaborate on activities, program content, and appropriate cultural engagement. This has roots in the concept of beginning where the people are.
Community analysis is the next step and involves identifying the issue at hand, which can be seen as the disconnect from home and preparation for the dangers that many Indigenous youth face when going to high school off reserve. It is crucial to gain a first-hand understanding of the struggles by communicating with the students to ensure effective programming is provided. The stage of organization development requires the organizers to develop relationships with those they are working with and for, throughout the community it is being presented to. In the case of the Dreamwalker gathering, the audience is high school-aged Indigenous youths across Ontario. These relationships are incredibly meaningful as they help develop a healthy allyship for all those involved in making the Dreamwalker events possible. The next 3 steps, popular action, evaluation, and ending, are very specific to each event. However, this could look like continuously developing the event.
Here the benefits of community organizing in regards to the Dreamwalker event can be seen. It provides opportunity for Indigenous youth attending high school off reserve to take on leadership positions, which empower them to not only focus on themselves and their well-being, but also to help others who are on the same journey.
These youth, Kern Strang, age 18, Jethro Anderson, age 15, Kyle Morisseau, age 17, Jordan Wabase, age 15, Reggie Bushy, age 15, Paul Penakis, 21, and Robin Harper, 18, will be forever remembered as symbols of the struggle Indigenous youth face every day.
It is important to recognize that the process of fighting against oppression is an incredibly exhausting one. However, this does not take away from the importance of the resistance, and it is not something that deters these Indigenous youths from persevering with their communities for future generations that follow. Community organizing strengthens the resilience of Indigenous communities, which can be seen through the empowerment of the Indigenous youths at events such as Dreamwalker gatherings.